him and the rest of this LGD team to a potential group ascend finish.
Listen, I was on board with LGD, you know, being potentially a dark horse in this group and definitely being the favorites over LNG. I might not be on that train with you and winning the entire LPL split.
We sent TES the first stand. Anything's possible.
Oh my god. Well,
we got the game draft here. Skarner's a blue side ban, so you know anything is possible, guys. Best of first pick. Give it to me. Just do it. Sasa has not played this champion. He's played this champion once, and it wasn't great. So
the ball is in your court, LGD. Time's a ticking. Well,
all right.
If you can't, you know, lock in the Abessa right away, you can go with the all-reliable Vi as your jungle pick of choice for Climber. Now, this earlier today he did play the Xin Zhao, so now some guaranteed lockdown. We'll see if LGD can draft composition around this core.
Ambessa has only lost a single game so far. She has been 100% pick rate here in the LPL. And we finally get to see LNG pick it up. We'll see if that is still going to lead towards a victory, especially with how exciting this champion has been. I know, we've been getting a lot of Neferi hovers. We're on 25.06 for any of the people at home. But it doesn't seem like any of our junglers have been feeling quite adventurous. So, gonna have to kick that can down the road for whether or not we'll see the dog.
I mean, hell, I would just take a Neferi mid lane. I think Neferi is just such a funny champion to watch now in her new state where her ult and W have been swapped, and now you get an ardent targetability factor.
She got the Tom Kench treatment.
Yeah,
hey.
That's pretty crazy. Now LGD flashing what was Zika's counter pick option into the Ambessa. I have no idea. Oh my god, I guess Sasa knows how to play the Gwen. And he's been on that Gwen sauce as well. And the fact that LGD, knowing that the Taliyah is available for XQW to snipe, that is a great combo to pair with the Vi.
Now, we need to see something a little bit different than what LNG were looking for. When LNG drafted this composition just a few, about an hour and a half ago versus JDG, we wanted to see them dive bottom lane with their Kalista pair. Now here, we're seeing it again with the Gwen and the Vi, this time in the hands of LGD. They have a great amount of ability to kind of find a single member, make that pick composition work. But I'm a little worried here. When you look at what LNG have, they have strong ability to kind of play through their lanes. They have a strong laner in the Varus and the Ambessa yet again. If they're not able to find advantages, I think LNG certainly have put themselves in a good spot now that we're getting into the second half of draft.
All right, now a couple things that I want to point out for LNG so far in this composition core. They don't have a dedicated frontline member. It's just, you know, divers in the Nocturne and the Ambessa. So I would like to see if Zhuo is going to go for something a little bit more traditional in the engage support lineup, because not really inspiring on the Senna with the Kalista setup that Photic piloted in just the previous game. And I think it would do a lot of wonders for LNG if they have someone dedicated to just be able to face check a lot of those bushes and at least supplement the primary engage that LNG have so far.
And what other mid laners are they going to be looking to ban? Orianna is obviously the most powerful when we talk about the Nocturne combo, and also going into the Taliyah matchup, so wouldn't be surprised to see if that's the final ban here. Expecting for LNG to snap that up if it is left up and available. And what I do want to see from LNG on the back end of this draft is getting themselves some more consistent engage. One of the problems that they had in just their last game versus JDG is they didn't have a strong way of starting fights outside of the Vi ultimate. So that'll be something that I'm looking for as we get further here.
LGD, a little scared about the Nico possibility coming in from LNG. So I imagine they could just go ahead and go for the Orianna to synergize that Paranoia Shockwave combo delivery. LNG would then guarantee support counterpick for Zhuo. But actually, instead of Orianna, Galio is another way that you can synergize with either the Ambessa or the Nocturne diving forward. And the fact that Photic is on something like the Varus, he can at least safely supplement some damage from a long ways away.
Okay, does mean that LGD are going to have at least 2 winning lanes when we talk about the solo lanes here. So definitely opening up some space for Climber. And a big move here in terms of our mid laners. When we look Galio and Talia, how they play the map is going to be so pivotal to their victories. So 80 carries, when we're talking about the engage, this is probably just going to have to be Xayah Rakan. We've seen this duo usually get separated as it is very, very potent. And allowing the Xayah to kind of say, hey, I welcome the engage. I welcome the Mbessa diving into my backline. I welcome the Nocturne and the Galio, because all of the feathers should provide enough of a disincentive to be like, okay, we have to really pick our fights very carefully.
Oh, that's interesting. I wonder if LGD were concerned about a rel coming out from Zhuo and just wanting to pick up the Alistar as a guaranteed counter to prevent the rel getting any of those crash down Magnetstorm combos off, supplementing the engage. And so that means Zhuo has to go for something that is a little non-committal with that def charge so that he doesn't get actually punted out. Will always at least guarantee a point and click CC to get things started for LNG. But overall, LGD, I mean, the composition screams a lot of dive in just the top 3-man core, but then the Xayah is the only champion that can't really go forward, but at least it is self-sufficient and can always deal with any of the threats from LNG.
Yeah, I think the spin that this LGD roster is able to have is they're going to be playing very similar to having like an Ahri composition where, yes, you can go for the dive, but what I really want to see from LGD is them setting up a round of objectives, getting into Fog of War, and then allowing the Gwen to come in from a flank, allowing for Talia to put all of her Unraveled Earth, and make it very difficult for a team like LNG to walk forward and find your picks. I think that this team will struggle with damage when we look at the side of LNG if they are not able to find a numbers advantage immediately.
Sure. And for LNG, their work's cut out for them. In the previous game, we had high expectations for Zika, the one franchise player that has been a staple for LNG for so long. Had some promising looks on the Gwen, at least in the laning phase, but unfortunately for them, didn't get a chance to really leverage that advantage into something sustainable. This time around, he just has the Mbessa. And you mentioned it before earlier on the broadcast, Alec, is that Mbessa is kind of a clip farmer. She gets to do a lot of montage, BS kind of stuff. So we're going to see how well LNG can actually prop up this Mbessa for success, because so far for LNG's history in this season, it really has been Zika, the most consistent and reliable person on this roster.
Now he's playing into the matchup he just played on the opposite side, has to play against the Gwen as well, which we're already kind of seeing early trades, very difficult for them to deal with. Even the all-in, even if, Mbessa level 6 is able to find something, the amount of healing from the 1,000 cuts is proving to be very, very difficult to deal with. So going to be looking to see how Sasi plays this, especially as someone who, at least this year so far, has really kind of trended towards playing the weaker, kind of weak side, not a lot of resources, and kind of playing with more of the bruisers, especially of the AD variety.
Yeah. Definitely was clenched for Climber there. I thought that Zhuo was just going to immediately send the dredge line, but holds it in fear of not knowing where the rest of LGD's members are. Gets a decently deep ward, at least onto the blue buff of Climber. And LNG looks like they're going to go for a cross-map start in terms of jungle pathing. I'm curious to see where LGD really wants to put a lot of their resources in, at least for the first 4 minutes of the game, if Climber is just going to go for kind of a standard full clear rotation, or if he wants to make any early moves.
Well, this time, I will say, there's no Kalista Nico that you have to dive, Kalista Senna that you have to dive for, so this might actually be an appropriate time for you to go for a dive on top side, compared to what we saw from LNG. But again, their bottom lane has been so good at getting early advantages and really being able to provide in team fights, so I think that there's a lot of answers. But I mean, hey, look, he's pathing towards the top side of the map. They already have early vision knowing that he's on the bottom side, so we're kind of seeing LNG's bottom lane. You know you have the Nautilus, you know you have this Varus, so try to take advantage of this. And also going for something a little bit different. I know we tend to see Arcane Comet, but it seems like the Halo Blades here for Photic wanting to really index on short, small trades versus the Xayah.
And at least for their credit, it's starting to work. They have the level 2 spike already, having successfully pushed away Shaoye and YCX from being able to walk up and try and get some presence in this lane. We'll see how that evolves over the next couple of levels. Meanwhile, Sasi getting an early push onto Zika's Mbessa. One thing I think is kind of cool is that in the previous matchup when Zika piloted the Gwen, and we had oh my gosh, I'm blinking on the name of our top laner that just Allah played it. He went for the electrocute. He was trying to go for quick bursty trades and trying to out damage Zika's Gwen, but Zika, probably more familiar with the matchup, is actually opting into Grasp, so a little more sustain heavy, just trying to maximize his HP pool.
It's been interesting that our top laners have been experimenting. Again, Electrocute got buffed a couple patches beforehand. I think a lot of people are trying to see how much value you can actually squeeze out, especially with one of the runes in Summon Airy being taken away and kind of limiting some of the champions that used to abuse that.
Yeah.
I do think that Grasp of the Undying is just a lot stronger, especially because Mbessa is one of those champions that gets access to more range from her attacks with the Drake concepts and just so much mobility. Climber's now finished all of his topside camps. Zika is half HP, and there is a wave coming in, so we'll see if after the scuttle, if Sasa is going to be getting a little bit of jungle attention.
It would have to come at the flash Q from Climber to guarantee enough time for Sasa and Climber to get in burst damage. Now, XQW under fire. Good taunt from Haichao. And the phase rush to immediately skirt away from any incoming return damage from XQW. And just low on mana means that he's going to need some attention from Climber to help push out this next wave so that he can get a base off.
Yeah, it does mean that WeiWei is actually going to have time to do some respawn Raptors and even look for a recall afterwards. Can probably greed and continue to do more camps as typical when we talk about Nocturne. He's a champion that is very reliant on him hitting level 6. He can be a good skirmisher even before that, but typically we're kind of waiting to him hit around the 50 CS mark, which is about the time when junglers are able to get that level 6 and have a really big impact on the Nocturne.
And there's actually an opportunity for WeiWei, but it looks like he's just going to base. Sasa and Zika had just both teleported back to topside. If WeiWei wanted to extend his time on the Rift, he could have gone for a quick gank, either getting an HP chunk or a Flash Summoner Spell Burst and really set up Zika for success. But Zika says, nah, dude, you ganked for me enough times in the second game. You know, we don't... Just let me play out my lane. I'll be totally fine. And WeiWei continues the level 6 power farm.
Sure. And we're taking a look across the lanes. We said that for LGD, I think that the solo lanes were going to be a point of strength for them. Taliyah doesn't have a lot of damage very early on to kind of deal with how resilient someone like Haichao is on the Galio. And so far, I've actually really liked how LNG have played some of the vision game early on, trying to get vision onto Climber. They yet again get a ward onto his Raptors, so they know exactly where this Vi is. And Nocturne now gets to kind of play with, you know, some god hacks, basically. He's like, okay, look, I know that enemy jungle is on top side. I have camps that are not really going to be respawning, but maybe we can play towards the top side of the map. Neither of these teams have sent their bottom lanes over, and Grubs are going to be up in 20 seconds. So kind of looking at our two top laners, how are they going to be leveraged to open up an advantage for their teams?
Yeah, because it definitely seems like both junglers want to play for the first Grub rotation. Zika and Sasa, both level 6. Needlework comes out. Zika forced to flash, but still has public execution. But no teleport means that he is just forced to stay at this lane with 300 HP. So not in the strongest position to help contest for Grubs, but that is why LNG trying to bring over Zhuo first on this roam to see if they can at least snipe one away. As WeiWei gonna step up, Climber smites one, walks away, conceding position in the river since Zhuo is here first, and that should be the other two Grubs going over to the hands of LNG.
Yep, that's exactly it. Like you were saying, the ultimate economy, they no longer have that available. Shaoye finds a pick.
Blade Caller, a lot of damage. Shaoye just keeping his distance and positioning right outside of the turn range. The flash forward from Photic, but he still has a barrier.
Photic!
Double flash. Oh, Photic! He wins the 1v1. Okay, and the action continues in the mid lane. Paranoia, they turn out the lights, but Haichao gets jumped by Climber's cease and desist, and LGD equalize on the map.
We can check that in the replay, man. I don't know what just happened. Shaoye, who has been so resilient in a lot of these 1v1s and in the team fights, I think kind of loses his mind there, trying to predict Photic on the arrows. It's both of the summoner spells gone from our AD, so we can take a look at how this started. I loved how this kind of starts for LGD. I mean, Shaoye is playing just perfectly outside of turret range. This E lands. It's a great barrier to try to bait him, but I mean, there's just no spells here for Photic. He flashes to try to dodge nothing. He gets an auto tech that he can't get rid of. And this was the engage coming in from Haichao. Why is he the first one to start this? Yes, you have a lot of HP, but your team doesn't do any damage. You have a Nautilus right next to you, man. You haven't even gotten the Nocturne ult up and available.
That's why I said this was going to be a super banger, Alk. Just both teams
Yep.
throwing themselves at each other. Is it going to be the highest quality gameplay? We don't need to answer that question. The only important thing is that you are entertained, and that is what we strive for, baby. Just under 8 minutes into the game, as we already talked about, the grub rotation being taken off the board, but still, there's still a dragon to play for both teams.
Now, that bottom lane exchange, while it is Photic grabbing the kill, I will say minorly does advantage LGD, because now that both AD carries don't have flash, at least Xayah does have the Feather Storm. She has the ultimate that allows her to escape, at least for a few seconds, and apply some feathers onto the ground. Photic is not going to be as lucky, and there's still a cease and desist you have to deal with. There's still this Alistar and Taliyah that you have to try to get away from, so things to be looking at as we have some objectives. Dragon still not taken by either team, as we had them all investing on those first set of grubs, and the second set is going to be coming up in 2 minutes' time.
Yeah. Shaoye can just cope and say, hey guys, there's no sums on Varus now, you know? So it's all
my
yours.
My jungler's on the top side of the map. I think Climber's like, cool, dude, I'm going to keep taking my camps.
Oh, man. Climber and Shaoye. I'm looking at this and seeing more Raafaa and Alk on my screen, potentially. But first dragon going to go the ways of LNG. No contest from Climber. He's going to try to make an opportunity happen on Zika, who
look at Haichao, though.
In the first exchange for 1v1 between Sasa and Zika. And as you called out, there was a potential move from Haichao, but XQW pushes up on the minion wave, tries to maintain vision. So now this should be an opportunity, unless XQW drops his position here. Haichao still locked under the tower, so this should be clean from the side of LGD. Flash cease and desist, but the public execution goes through. Well played by Zika.
How does that ultimate land? I thought he was in the hollowed mist, so he should have been untargetable. Maybe it's just some Mbessa gameplay. Maybe I'm also just seeing things. That's okay. It's late. It's almost 3 a.m. It's basically 3 a.m. I'm willing to give myself excuses on this one, but they need to help clear this wave, and Taliyah's taking a recall.
Sasa forced to flash away from the paranoia. Zika can easily get in range, slicing and dicing his way through with the Drake Hound step, and a great punish from LNG.
One of the questions that I had in this game was, how are our two mid laners going to be able to move around the map with this Taliyah and this Galio? We saw Galio try to cheat up towards the top side before that dive, and while Zika does make the outplay, we're kind of seeing XQW having to follow around the map. We haven't seen him really apply himself with this ultimate. It seems like his ultimate was down, so maybe tried to get back into this lane. That'll be something that we'll explore as we get further into this.
Second rotation of grubs just spawning now, so LGD trying to move YCX up here first, but Zhuo is already lurking in Fog of War, and there's a ward here, and nicely called by the observers. Here comes the TP, and it's a great flank opportunity for Haichao. LGD immediately bail, and they're going to cede position over to LNG, who should have full control of all three of these grubs. It's going to be too difficult for LGD to even challenge. Really nice macro win for the side of LNG.
Exactly, and oh no, Sasa got to be careful here. Haichao's in the area.
I think he's... Okay, maybe he's not dead. I guess Zika did not have public execution, so not enough lockdown to set up the burst on a flashless Gwen. But for LGD, they're not completely out of this game, but LNG are, you know, to their credit, are making some solid moves on the map play so far.
I think that the fact that that top lane dive did not go well is really putting LGD on the back foot. They lost out on that fight, so they were late already for the grubs. They no longer had ultimate, and because XQW doesn't have the Taliyah, the Weaver's Wall, they're not able to even split up the fight, change some of the terrain. That was something that we said in draft for LGD, was they need to get to objectives first. They need to be able to play around Fog of War and make it very difficult for LNG to jump in and kind of make them ask some questions. Seems like XQW now in a side lane.
Could be in trouble, but just sidesteps the rest of the damage from Zika after he already used the ultimate. No need to flash, so good patience and good resolve from XQW to hold his cool.
But that's why we can't see this Mbessa playing against the Taliyah. Taliyah's not as strong of a side laner as some of the other champions, and especially for someone like Mbessa, she loves playing against immobile carries, so Taliyah's got to be very careful. You can almost never have her match. It's only for a single wave, and it is going to force a teleport. There is, you know, not much loss from that, but I think Zika giving a warning to XQW saying, look, this is what's going to continue to happen. You need to be somewhere else on the map. Otherwise, it's going to continue to be a win for LNG.
Yeah, doesn't seem like LGD are that confident in having Sasa pair up into Zika's and Bessa so far if they're trying to let XQW be the one catching the waves, but now they've gotten the lane allocations back to normal, it seems like. We still have a minute and some change before the second dragon of the game does spawn, and Rift Herald coming up in 3 minutes respectively, so still some time for LGD and LNG to pick up some waves before they need to start playing for objectives. We haven't really discussed on whether LNG or LGD are on timers respectively, because they both have some scaling elements in this composition.
Yeah, Gwen is always a champion that is very deceptive. Her passive is just insane when you read what this is available. I'm going to hold that as WeiWei and Zhuo are in the area, but doesn't seem like there's going to be a top lane dive. Maybe around this. I think it's a bit risky. Zhuo, don't do it, brother. Don't do it. The ward is fake. The ward's fake.
Zhuo forced to flash away, and Zika's just like, yeah, I'm not helping you, bro. I'm finishing this base. You should have not challenged for that ward at all.
No. When we're talking about timers, I think that I'm going to award LNG with the ability to scale just a little bit better in this game. I think that Nocturne gets additional value when playing against low range, and Mbessa is a champion that I think can be very destructive here. I mean, Varus is always another champion that can kind of do very well, but for LGD, they do have some, but I think that they're so reliant on being able to find picks, and as champions get more durable, as games go longer, it is more and more difficult for them to assert themselves on the map, and they're a team that is reliant on LNG walking into them first. So
Sure.
We'll see how LGD are able to find themselves kind of in an advantage in this game. The gold is even, but we're not seeing them really play to some of the strengths that we saw from them in Split 1 and even in their first game versus IG.
Yeah. Meanwhile, LNG are playing above kind of the results that we have seen from them so far. Solid macro game, 5 grubs, now picking up their second dragon of the game. They're going to be that much closer to a soul condition, which is going to be an Infernal Soul game, and for a lot of the champions that they drafted so far, benefit greatly from having that picked up for them. So LNG are probably in just a really chill spot right now, and just got to continue playing patient, and just, if LGD are the ones who have already shown a proclivity to being too eager to pull the trigger on some things, LNG can just wait and punish.
I think it's a small issue that we're seeing for LGD now, multiple games in a row. Climber sacrificing some of his camps, and while that is fine to do in certain instances, I think he's covering too much for his lanes, especially in the top side like we saw with the Gwen. He is now down 30 CS. He's down basically a full level to his counterpart, which means WeiWei is going to be hitting level 11. Second point in that ultimate for this Nocturne is very dangerous. Lower cooldown, a little bit more damage, I think. As LNG, you have to be feeling good with where you are in this game. You haven't been pushed all that much. You are ahead when it comes to the grubs and the dragon stacking. And LGD, we need to see a little bit more from them. I thought maybe with this bot lane pair they wouldn't be able to do much, but they don't win the 2v2. And I don't know. I think that this Gwen has been, I don't want to say fake, but I think when you look at Gwen in a vacuum, she's usually a champion that can be a bit of a weak laner. So she does need a little bit of attention from her team, but I think we're just seeing an overcorrection for most of our teams here that have been able to pick up the Gwen.
You definitely want to put resources into the Gwen, but it definitely seems like LGD are like putting too much time into the Gwen. And
hey, LNG did the same thing, and we already saw what happened, right?
Exactly. So... yeah. That part they should have learned from. Okay, Zhuo is caught out and is just forced to engage here. Hero's Entrance is going to come over the top. Maybe Haichao can buy something and salvage another play, but cease and desist right on top of the Galio means that now Haichao is in trouble. He flashes, and YCX pulverized flash. Bring that butt back here. We're eating Galio tonight, and LGD pick up another 2 kills.
All right, he said there was some beef in the lanes. Well, LGD, they're able to make that play, and Zhuo gets caught out, leads to his mid laner dying as well. I thought LGD did kind of overreact to a lot of that play. I mean, Shaoye uses the ultimate without much threat onto himself, so that'll be a small timer for them. XQW tries to make the play on a Photic.
Looking for Photic, but he still has both summoner spells up, Barrier and a Flash, and Photic just stands his ground, is able to just kite this one out safely. I liked it, at least XQW, just trying to see if he can get Photic to panic, but he holds his cool.
Yep. As soon as XQW misses the flick, there's just no play for them, and we'll get to take a recall as to what exactly happened. Thank you to our observers. Just flame this guy, flame this guy, flame this guy. I mean, yeah, his jungler is literally walking away. His AD carry is hitting the mid wave. This is just not an angle for them. So yes, it's the Galio ultimate, and it is the force here from Climber. They just kind of punish Haichao, but this engage from YCX, this is why we were excited for LGD coming into this series and coming in to Split 2, was this bottom lane. Shaoye and YCX, they have been a bot lane duo that has been able to come to task to some of the best bot laners that we've seen here in the league, and hopefully they can continue to perform and hope to bring this team to a third place, maybe even a higher finish here in the group.
Yeah, and we had just talked about how LNG are kind of in a spot where even though you have pick tools that you want to proactively use, LGD have already shown that they're kind of overeager in making the plays. You can just punish and counter engage, which is kind of what's happening right now. WeiWei pops the paranoia, but forced to flash away from the
Where is YCX?
Zika's trying to go in, but Haichao with a nice flank, but just cannot save and bail out Zika from going down. LGD, 4-man strong as a unit, just able to kite out their threats one by one, and they're just falling like ants. LNG really crumbling under the pressure.
Oh, wait a minute. Talia's trying to fly in on mid. Photic does have a ton of movement speed, so he's able to get out of that play, and that'll be LGD able to find more kills, more picks on a side lane. I said during the draft that I am worried for LNG in terms of their damage profile. They can be a little weak, a little susceptible in fights, and there we got to see Zika wasn't able to find any purchase in that fight. So it means that LGD open up a little bit of time for themselves, buy themselves some space in this game, and we get to the third dragon here at 19 minutes. A lot of ultimates missing here, and LNG should feel a little enfranchised to walk into this bottom lane. You don't have the darkness, but you do have still this Galio's heroic entrance and this bottom lane that we can still rely upon to start a fight.
Yeah, WeiWei and Photic are still at really good item breakpoints at this point in the game in terms of item curves, so they should feel confident in being able to supply a lot of damage and burst if they find the right engage despite being down paranoia, but it's come back up off cooldown. YCX takes up the engage, and you know what? That's good enough for LNG. Immediately blinking out the support. That's a 5-on-4 guaranteed. And LGD probably just lost their opportunity at denying what could have been LNG's third dragon, as now they turn on the engage, turn out the lights, and it just might be going from bad to worse for LGD. They jump right on top.
Climber!
The Rift Herald! He saved himself, and now he's getting multiple knockups on the other side. WeiWei gets collapsed upon. Haichao flicked backwards. Zika's able to at least answer one back, and he's going to try to see if he can layer even more engage, but LGD kind of salvaging what was a bumbled fight there at the beginning. This is why it's a super banger out. We're just getting entertaining value from both sides of the rift.
Climber said, hey, look, Hacker was, a great jungler that had been playing in the LPL for a pretty long time. He's the one that had that original Rift Herald play when we got the driving Shellys, and I just don't see why YCX is walking up. There's no unbreakable will or unstoppable will here for him, so why is our support walking into this? We have to just be able to give up the dragon. We don't even have our Weaver's Wall either. And even Climber here, this very realistically should have just been him dying. But the fact that he flashes forward, gets into it, saves this play in its entirety for LGD. If he wasn't able to do this, they do not get this kill onto WeiWei. And they still, remember, they still lost on the dragon in this play, and they still went down numbers. So despite some of the cheekiness of this play, LNG are still in a good spot now.
Just a comedy of errors happening on the screen, but you know what? This is what we live for. This is the LPL that I've come back to enjoy in our second split. 7-4 kills on the Rift so far. LGD still a decent gold advantage over LNG. But the nice thing is that LNG still in it, still have ways to be able to fight fights properly. They're not really opting into them all the time, and it does really come down to a question of who kind of messes up first in terms of walking up and forcing the fight, and whoever is the more patient one tends to be the victor.
We're seeing them take control of top side. Now, Gwen is a champion that when she's in jungle, she can just 1v9 a Baron by herself. She has so much healing, especially max HP, and she does so much more to monsters. So I like this from LGD. They go for the Gambit. They understand that how much damage they do around objectives, and that'll be a voracious Otacon going over to them for free. So
Ooh.
I need to see in the next 2.5 minutes, how aggressively are they going to play? Because in that same timer, Infernal Soul is going to be spawning as the soul point is reached for LNG. They're going to try and make this play around the mid lane, mostly just to protect the turret. That's still going to go down, and that was double teleport, so they need to make this play work.
The eyes are on Photic. He still has both summoner spells, but I don't think there's any point in burning them now since he is already dead to rights. Zika manages to get a teleport and deny what could have been another kill over to LGD. This sets him up to at least get some vision control in that bottom river since we are still 2 minutes away from the 4th dragon of the game.
Okay, and look, now they get to push in on mid. They use this Gwen who destroys turrets now with the Nashor's Tooth. Also finishing a Seeker's Arm Guard, so we'll have at least a mini Zonia's YCX.
He's going in. Hero's Entrance is going to come right on top, tries to dissuade the engage as much as possible. Zika is ripping through them with the Drake Hound Step, and maybe this was just a little bit more than LGD could actually handle. They were trying to limit tests with the Voration Otacon GAs, and they got nothing off of it other than a lot of burned ultimates.
I'm okay with that, though. I am more than okay with that. Again, minute and a half before this dragon, it's sole point here for LNG. With these ultimates, it's going to be a quite tough timer for them to be able to break. I think a lot of these ults are going to probably be up a little bit closer to the spawn point of that dragon. And we're going to see them make this dive. In theory, this is a terrible play because we saw from draft that for LGD, they want LNG to walk into them. You do not want to be making an engage play when Galliult is still up and available, when the public execution from Mbessa is still ready to go. And we said with this Otacon, they need to be able to make aggressive plays. Now, the only person with the GA available is XQW. And while it is a great target to still have that GA, it's only 45 seconds. And we're looking at this dragon coming up. I mean, I think that this might have just been a win here. Look at the summoner spells that are gone here for LGD. No flash from YCX. I think that might be reason enough for LGD. Now, look, they're the first to play under the river.
And for LNG, a lot of their ultimate spells are actually coming back up. Zhuo is the only one that doesn't have the Death Charge quite available yet. WeiWei's Paranoia just coming up in the next 5 seconds. Same for Zika's Public Execution. LGD have at least bought themselves first entry into the river. YCX actually takes so much damage, he's forced to pop his ultimate just to make sure that he's still healthy enough to at least get one solid engage, one solid disengage in preparation for this fight. Sasa trying to mark Zika at the moment. The rest of LNG trying to brute force their way through that bottom tri-bush, and LGD have to give ground because Haichao does have the high flank on the left side and pushing in through the mid wave, threatening the tier 2. Weaver's Wall comes out over the top, trying to block LNG from being able to get into the Dragon Pit, but it's still 5,000 HP.
Late.
They turn out the lights. This is so playable for LNG, but they just turned right on top of WeiWei. If they can take out the jungler, there's no chance for a spike contest. And now the rest of LNG have to depend on their damage dealers to try to win out the fight. Shaoye secures the dragon. Soul is denied. LNG cannot do it. They only find YCX, but that is not good enough. LGD win the fight.
And the pings go out onto the Baron. You have this Gwen move over to the big purple worm. And LGD are fighting for their lives. It was not an easy game for them to play in the first 15 minutes. We saw a comedy of errors from both of our teams here. And even in that last fight, not as clean as maybe we would have wanted to see, but LNG are not able to secure the Dragon Soul at this time. It'll be the Dragon going over. It'll be the Baron here.
Photic?
Can Photic channel Guma?
Nope. It's a little too late. Even the observers were ready. We've seen so many Varus arrow steals over the years, just in particular that 2022 World Championship final between DRX and T1. Not going to happen today. Take a look back at the replay.
I thought, hey, I mean, it's cool that we did this Talia ultimate, but it's only WeiWei, and it still goes down in time for the rest of the team to get here. And I want to give a special shout out to Sasa on this Gwen. He is providing so much pressure onto the back line, and I mean, you're looking at where some of the carries are. Photic is still hitting onto YCX. WeiWei goes down early enough in this fight, and this Gwen close to level 16. That is a huge breakpoint. 3 items. This was the Gwen that we wanted to see in Game 1 from LNG for Zika, and now we're going to be able to see it from Sasa. So he is going to have such a large amount of damage, and he is going to be, I think, veritably a massive raid boss for LNG to have to deal with.
And for the first time, LGD have surmounted a pretty sizable gold advantage, about 5,000 for themselves as they're barreling down the bottom side of the map, taking out the tier 2. Zika's able to equalize at least one turret back on the top lane in that T1, but the Weaver's Wall is going to try to cut off Haichao, clips him with the Unraveled Earth, forces the flash out before Climber can get in range with that ball breaker. Nicely timed from Haichao, but now down to Summoner Spell. Zika has teleport. I don't know if they're going to try to look for a teleport flank or just hold the line. Chain of Corruptions goes wide from Photic, trying to engage onto YCX. Still has the ultimate available. Doesn't pop it quite yet. Finally now, Climber turns it on with the Season Desist. Pulverized Flash once again. Punts in Haichao. The Flashless Galio now under fire. And Sasa's ripping him to shreds with the scissors. Sasa on this Gwen. Remarkable in this second half of the game, as now the rest of LNG are forced to scramble under the might of LGD, making the siege happen. Zika still has the... Turn off the TV, bro. It's a Jover. LNG gonna seed the inhibitor. Photic trying to put in some pressure with these arrows, but there's not much can be done in this siege.
It's a horror film out here for LNG, man. I mean, Zika just spent so much time trying to find the angle, doesn't even find the right one. I mean, he doesn't find anything, to be fair. And now LNG, they lost out on the bottom side, so now their inhibitor is gone. I mean, take a look at this replay. I just feel like LNG, they needed to pull the trigger. There's a missed Verisalt. At this point, just call off the play. Wait for a reset. Photic gets caught out. And this entire time, we saw them pushing in the mid-wave. They're trying to play on 2 lanes. LNG were not able to execute. Yeah, they got XQW, but, I mean, Zika on this Mbessa needed to get into this backline. He just waited way too long. At least wait for level 16, man, so you get 3 points into your ult.
Well, he's level 16 now, but he's still down on the cooldown for public execution. We're just a minute away from the 30-minute mark. 6,000 gold advantage for LGD. They've already taken out that bottom inhibitor, so super minions are going to add that extra pressure on the bottom side of the map. Not sure what the replay is showing here. Is a string.
So that was the when you were talking about like, are they maybe looking for a flank play? That red minion just like I was wondering what that was, and then we got into that huge fighter on bot side. So I don't know what happened. I think maybe Alistar like punted a minion in a weird direction, and he kind of got lost. He had to go back to his lane. But yeah, I feel like they should have shown a little bit more context. Maybe they should have shown that during the replay. Either way, this is going to be LGD with that commanding gold lead. It took a lot of time for them. It was very difficult, and at certain points, we were a little worried for them here. But as LGD fans, right now, we're excited. We're on the cusp of LGD getting their first win here in Group D for the placements in Split 2. And honestly, I think it is great for them when we talk about what this roster is meant to be as a developmental roster.
Yeah.
And for a bunch of rookies, they need every win counts, and especially in a double round robin best-of-1 format.
Yeah, and for LGD, you know, one of the big concerns that kind of showed its head in the very first game of the day against IG was when they had the advantage, sometimes they were just a little too eager to press that advantage forward and just not respecting what the windows they had actually were. This time around, LGD, not necessarily always, you know, restraining the eagerness, but they were definitely a little more patient and allowing LNG to make the mistake first, as the Weaver's Wall gets XQW away from WeiWei's reach on the Paranoia. So now that's a Nocturne ultimate gone. They're going to turn it on with the Cease and Desist.
Beautiful.
Nicely buffered by Zhuo to get away from the Vi ultimate. So just a trade of ultimates so far from LGD and LNG. Not much to write home about. We got a minute and some change before the Baron spawns back up again on the map.
I think it's pretty worrisome here for LGD. Yes, they have a 7,000 gold lead, but the fact that they haven't really been able to push out on some of these turrets is a bit worrisome. I don't think it's quite the end of the game, but you are giving over some resources. You're allowing your opponents to start to slingshot back, especially with those waves on the bottom side, going over to Zika on this Mbessa. So we'll see if he's able to do it. The franchise man for the organization, can he pull off a victory on what has been one of the most OP champions in Split 2 so far? I know very early on, we're only day 2 here, but Mbessa has been by and far away one of the most broken champions. And it is best of ones, right? So you only get one chance. You kind of have to first pick it. And these are some of the few games we see it on red side.
Yeah. And the fact that LGT took the Gwen Gambit and are kind of actually making good use of it, unlike LNG, who tried to do it against JDG in the previous game. the fact that Sasa, at first, you know, during the laning phase, wasn't as inspiring maybe necessarily Zika's laning phase was with his Gwen, but in this second half, oh, he has really put down the pressure. The Weaver's Wall was trying to cut off a couple members from LNG. Doesn't really find anyone, but it does force them out of the jungle recesses, and it makes it a lot easier for LGD to sweep out any vision they need to make it really dark for LNG and a lot more dangerous to walk in and trying to contest because they want to set up for this Baron.
Again, Gwen on an Elder objective is so dangerous to deal with. Haichao is moving on forward, and I like what LGD are doing. Have your jungle and have this Gwen sit on the Baron, take control of mid with your other 3, and then let Taliyah even set up a wall to make it very difficult. Looks like they want to try to make it engage, get a numbers advantage.
Oh, Zhuo tried to buffer the dredge line, but missed the wall, so he is forced to flash, and he still goes down. Haichao gets punted back in. WeiWei's going to try to turn it around with Zika onto the back line, but there's just too much damage. There's just too much to deal with on LGD. They rip the XQW Taliyah, but they can't deal with the Sasa Gwen, and it's just Photic left to defend the base 1v4. I don't think it's going to end up in a hero story for LNG. LGD starting to march it down into the base.
That'll be the end of this one. It's unfortunate for LNG. Again, they just came off of a loss to JDG. They needed to make a bounce back here. And LGD, it wasn't perfect. It wasn't clean, but they were able to find themselves ready the ship and get into their first win of Group D.
Zhuo is back up, tries to at least look for one of the targets, but everyone else is full, hitting on the Nexus. GG, well played. LGD defeat LNG.
Let's go! LGD are winning! Man, I was sweating beads. I was ready. I was like, there's no way LNG are gonna win this game, guys. I'm gonna get clipped for that LDL for LGD winning the LPL. But
the first step to LGD LPL domination has been completed. Being able to defeat LNG. If they were not able to do that, then your LGD stonks would have been down the toilet, I fear. So
it would have been quite difficult to play, but we got there, we got the win, and that's all that matters. People are always gonna, history is written by the victors. No one's gonna go back and watch games because obviously we need to be as current as possible. Everybody just needs to have the most correct idea at every single moment. We take those.
Before we continue the LGD glazing, because I understand it is deserved. I'm going to point out a couple things that even though LNG did not, really put up a convincing fight against LGD at all points in the game, there were a couple things that they did right. Their counteractive engages and play was pretty solid, and I think when they were in the lane where LGD were trying to force the engages and the dives a little too eagerly, then LNG had the right responses for the most part. And I also want to give some credit over to Photic because I think Shaoye just lost his mind a little bit in the Xayah Varus 1v1, and Photic definitely didn't seem like a liability in this game, unlike the previous one in the Kalista match against Paze's Kaisa. Unfortunately, once again, you are playing AD carry. There's only so much that you can really do. And if you're able to somehow like 1v3, 1v4, then you are considered one of the greats. And unfortunately, Photic is not him. But he wasn't the problem this game. So that's something.
His support player was, though. Zhuo just died so many times on like random timers. We think about the mid gank, the top side try brush. Zhuo made it very difficult for his team to actually like properly advance. And another game where I'm gonna be honest, I really didn't think Haichao had much impact in this game, and not like in an 80 carry away and like you're playing Galio, you and your jungler need to link up. I think that was one of the difficulties with this Nocturne is you see the Xayah on 4, you're like, all right, well, I can't really dive onto a Gwen. I'm not going to really dive onto a Xayah. I think it's pretty difficult, so I have to get level 6 before she does. It's the jungle just looked pretty weak, and we didn't get to see much. There's no agency for a player like Haichao when you are so reliant on the rest of your team starting a fight.
Yeah. I mean, when LNG first brought up this roster going into the first split, we definitely had our concerns, but we also had kind of expectations that, you know what, because you have a lot of players that are kind of journeymen, There's no real rookies on this roster. They've all, you know, played on other teams throughout their LPL careers respectively. Then,
Yeah.
you know what? Maybe they're punching for, you know, middle of the pack, middle of the group. That's what they should be hoping for. Unfortunately, in their first split, they were at the bottom of the pack. And just based off of the first half of, or I guess really the first quarter of this Group D's game so far, they are not looking too hot right now. And if LNG, this might be, you know, looking super far forward and, you know, maybe overestimating the first 3 games. But if I'm an LNG fan, I'm a little concerned about how far you're actually going to get in the second split. And you have to remember, if you are in the Nirvana group, you're in legitimate danger of having your entire season, not just the split, your entire season be cut short if you are at the bottom of that Nirvana group.
Yeah, Nirvana group has one of the great stipulations that the bottom 2 teams in the 6-team group are just done. Your competitive calendar is done by June, which is unheard of when you think about a lot of the competitive formats year-round, and very dangerous, especially in that fashion. In one way, it does give you a lot of extra time to kind of evaluate the roster and what changes you want to make going into 2026, but those are, I think, an unfortunate reality that no team wants to be the one to face. So
Yeah.
for LNG, they got to get their act together, and they got to do it fast because you're running out of games. Yes, there are still 4 more games to play in this double round robin so that they can kind of right the ship and try to find things to work on, but very quickly you're going to get put into that, you know, single round robin group for Nirvana, and then it's just like, it's go time. You gotta earn your paycheck there.
And the reason why I bring up these concerns is because there's no developmental pieces, as you already pointed out, for LNG. If there were some rookies on this roster, okay, sure, then I don't mind them, you know, placing lower on the end and just getting their rookie a lot of experience. And, you know, if they end up, you know, not making it to the summer split, then they can just rebuild for 2026. But if you built this roster trying to see if it would punch a little higher than the lower round of teams, then either you have to decide for yourself, do we really want to push for summer split? If so, we might have to make some roster swaps very, very soon. If not, and you're content with just writing out this roster until the very end and then making the changes going to 2026, that's also a fine goal. But going over to LGD, we can now start the glazing, Alk, because, man, let's go! LGD! They did it!
Yay!
They got their first win in the group!
We did it!
The rookies are looking good, baby.
Yes, Sasa in particular with this Gwen. I had a couple of questions because we look at what he's been playing in Split 1. It was a lot of Cassante, it was that Udyr, some Jax games, but nothing really quite like the Gwen, and it did take a little bit of time. Gwen is a late game scaling kind of champion, and once we got to, you know, level 15, level 16 mark, then he, I think, really started to kind of come into his own, and rightfully earned. I mean, 30% of his team's damage. This Gwen was near unstoppable, and this was the matchup. Again, we were talking about this matchup as being battle for third, battle for a chance to fight for a group ascend spot.
Yeah, and you know what? The Sasa Udyr game kind of left a lot to be desired because he was just a glorified front line for the LGD squad, which, you know, I feel like what Udyr's supposed to do or what he can do doesn't really like achieve the Udyr fantasy, but really stepping it up on the Gwen once they were able to get one of those big team fight blunders by LNG, and he just rode that snowball super high into the sunset for a massive Gwen carry. And you know what, Al? I'm actually curious if this is going to be a counter pick that a lot more teams are going to be experimenting with. I mean, you know, maybe Gwen might be the new Mbessa sauce.
Who knows? We'll have to see. As that's the end of the first half of day 2. I think that, you know, we still got a lot of great games. The next game in particular is a pretty big banger, and we'll see what adaptations both of these teams are coming on through with.
That's right. Well, for me, my shift is over, and we're going to have our boy Mozelle coming in to play-by-play for the rest of the night. But Alk is on that 6-game heater tonight, so best of luck, brother, 07. And to the rest of the audience and the fans in the chat, thank you so much for tuning in. We still got 3 more games coming your way, so stay tuned. We'll be right back.